I used to absolutely dread launching and I would get so anxious about it in my past business. And the reason behind that is because I would set really ambitious launch goals, like goals I probably could not achieve unless a miracle happened. And then I would frantically do everything I could to make this launch happen. I would post so many times on social media, do all the email newsletters, all the things. And I would just work myself to the bone because in my mind, a launch is when you go all out. And then I wouldn't hit the launch goal because I wasn't being super strategic and I also wasn't being sustainable about it. So I would burn out, not make my launch goal. And it's no wonder that I was so anxious and just dreaded launching. And so in this new 2.0 version of my business, where I'm sustainably growing my business and also sustainably doing sales and launches, I want to talk about how you can do launches in a manner where it works for your life and you can continue to launch so that you can make consistent sales. Because one of the reasons why I was riding that feast and famine roller coaster back when I was doing the other version of my business is because I would launch and I would make a good amount of money, but then I'd be so exhausted and trying to work with my clients that I was like, I'm just not going to launch again this year. That was really detrimental to my income. It is important that you can consistently and sustainably launch, and that's why I wanted to do this video. The first mindset shift and the first new philosophy I have around launching that I'm implementing in this new version of my business is doing life first launching. You heard that right. I am putting my life first and revolving my launches around that, instead of doing my launches and then revolving my life around it. As an example, my sister is coming to visit me soon and I'm so excited and we're going to travel. I'm going to show her around London. And so originally I was going to launch something, but I know now that it requires so much of my energy and my time to launch properly. Instead of doing a half-assed job where I'm not hanging out with my sister and not get the results I want. Instead, I've just delayed the launch a couple of weeks. It's not a big deal, so that when I come to the launch, I can be rejuvenated after just having traveled with my sister. So life first launching is so important. The next philosophy and the next mindset shift I developed around launching is just around the fact that it doesn't have to be such a big deal. Launching doesn't have to be this whole bells and whistles thing. If it's just you and a really small team, like launching doesn't have to be such a big deal. And instead, launching is simply just marketing and selling one of your products and one of your offers. That's literally all it is. It's shining a spotlight on it. It doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be daunting. It doesn't have to be this whole big thing. And I think that mindset and philosophy has just mentally made it a little bit more tangible and feasible and less daunting. So I'm now launching more often and don't feel as stressed about it. The next thing that's been really helpful too is understanding that there's different levels of launching. I before would just go all out, pedal to the metal for every single launch, no matter if it truly was a new product I was launching or something I was launching all the time. And obviously, I would burn out and get really overwhelmed. And so I now have levels of launching where it's like a low lift level of launching, a medium lift level of launching, and then a high lift level of launching. This has been really helpful for me because not every product and not every service requires the same level of launching. And you can be strategic and stagger it out as well so that you don't have two high lift launches back to back. Like maybe you have a high lift launch and then you have a low lift launch and then you have a medium one and then you have another low one and then you have another high one. You can try to stagger it. How I classify low, medium, and high lift launches are as follows. So if this is a brand new product and a brand new service that I have never introduced before, it's definitely a high lift launch because I need to warm up my audience about it. There might be education involved. So that's definitely a high lift launch. Have you launched this before? That's definitely an indicator as to how much of a lift it's going to be. And then the second thing too is the price point. Because if it's a really cheap Notion template that's $9, you probably don't need to go pedal to the metal to launch it. You definitely do need to give it some love, post about it a little bit on stories, send some newsletters out, but you don't need to warm it up for months and months and months if it's only $9. However, on the flip side, if you're selling a really high ticket program that's $9,000, let's say, then you definitely need to spend more time to launch it. You need to educate, you need to talk about why it's $9,000, what people are going to get. And so that's definitely a higher lift launch if you're selling a $9,000 program versus a $9 template. It really is around the price point, how novel or how new this product and service is, and if there's a little bit of education involved. So I now also classify each launch so I know mentally like how much work is involved. The other mindset shift and philosophy I now have around launches is that I don't necessarily need to do more. I might just have to launch for a little bit longer. So before, I would do my launches and then I would pressure myself to post 2 times a day on Instagram, show up on stories every single day send out an email like 3 times a week. I would just do more and more and more. And then once the launch was done, I would go back to sending an email once every 2 weeks or posting on Instagram 3 times a week. But something that's been really helpful for me in terms of sustainable content production and sustainable marketing is keeping it the same level of frequency come launch, but just having a longer launch period. As an example, if I know that I want to send 8 emails for my launch and I typically right now am sending 1 email a week, then I will try to start to send those emails 8 weeks in advance instead of trying to force myself to condense it and do it over a 2 week period. Maybe there's a longer warm-up period is what I'm saying. And actually having a longer warm-up period has helped me have higher conversions and do better in sales as well, because people just don't like being spammed over 2 weeks. It just feels weird. It doesn't feel great. Whereas if you're slowly warming them up, getting them excited about it, it does help with your conversion rates as well. More is not always better. And actually, you can save your mental sanity and just do it over a longer time period. And this goes into my next tip, which is the importance of the nurturing process or the warm-up process. This is so important. And this is something I used to not do as much because I would launch and I would get so burnt out so that I would just fall off. I wouldn't post as much. I wouldn't engage as much because I was just so burnt out and I was trying to service my new clients. However, now I am really trying to consistently warm up my audience so that they are primed and ready to buy whenever I launch. A lot of the success that comes from launching is actually built in the warm up or the nurturing stage. Because if you can build trust, build credibility, give a lot of free value so that your audience is engaged, primed, and ready to buy, when you do launch and you talk about your offer and you talk about the problems it's solving and all this stuff, it's just such a no-brainer. And your ideal customer is like, yes, I want that. Where's the link? Take my credit card, take my money. So the warm up and the nurture process is so important. And then the post-launch period is also really important. Because I used to just plan for the launch. I would schedule my content in advance. I would plan out my content calendar. After the launch, I would be so burnt out. I'd be so tired. And like I alluded to, servicing my new clients so that I would just ghost on social media. I wouldn't post. And that's not great because the warm up and the nurturing is so important, like I just mentioned. So now, as part of my launch strategy, I not only plan the whole pre-launch and the launch process, but I also batch and create content for that post-launch too. Because I know 2 to 3 weeks post-launch, I'm going to be really tired and it's going to be great if I have some content in the bank. So I hope this is helpful and helps remove some of the overwhelm and the anxiety with launching. And if you got a lot out of this video and you want more, definitely check out my new private podcast called Sustain Your Success. I overview all the sustainable growth strategies, sales strategies, and launch strategies in that podcast. And it's like this video, but way more in depth. And I also give you templates and resources as well. You can click the link down below to access it or visit selenaho.com/sys. Super excited for you to implement more sustainable practices with your launches. And if you have any questions, leave them down below.